landlords and tenants under the British and the Nizam. Introduction. During the time of Mughal emperors, on behalf of them, the zamindaris collected land revenues from the peasants. As revenue collectors, the zamindars often acted as the intermediaries between the government and the peasants. In return, they received a share of the revenue collected and sometimes also had right to collect some small local taxes. They also had a small band of soldiers with horses and guns. Their houses were like small forts called Gadi in Telangana. This enabled them to control the nearby villages. They often represented the problems faced by the peasants to the government. We call such landowners as landlords and the peasants who cultivate their lands as tenant cultivators. The zamindars also owned land on which the laborers worked. This was called their self-cultivated land or khudkas lands. They also gave their land to peasants either for a share of the produce or a fixed rent. There were two kinds of peasants, those who were independent land-owning cultivators paying land revenue through the zamindars and those who were tenants of the landlords. There were a large number of artisans and service castes who used to provide skills and manual labor. Many of them were considered to be of low and untouchable status, mainly got their livelihood from providing services to the farmers and landlords. Permanent settlement. Changes introduced by the British. When the British gained control over the India, they were keen to increase the land revenue as much as possible to finance trade and wars. This led to ruin of agriculture as farmers could not cultivate land under such conditions. There were great famines which killed thousands of people. They were also keen that peasants should till more and more land and grow cash crops that could be exported to England like cotton, indigo, sugarcane, wheat, etc. The company finally introduced the permanent settlement in 1793 when Cornwallis was the Governor General. By the terms of the settlement, zamindars were given the powers to collect the revenues agreed upon in auctions. Therefore, it was also called zamindari settlement. The amount to be paid was fixed permanently. That is, it was not to be increased in further. This would ensure a regular flow of revenue into the company and at the same time encourage the zamindars to invest in improving the land. The zamindar would benefit from increased production from the land. They continuously increased the revenue and changed the cultivators who did not meet the demand. This settlement inadvertently converted all the peasants into the tenants and the zamindars collected rent rather than revenue from them. Since rent collected was much higher than the revenue, the cultivators could not pay and sometimes deserted the lands. In the long run, the zamindars also suffered and became defaulters. The result. The company officials soon discovered that the zamindars were in fact not investing in the improvement of land. The revenue that had been fixed was so high that the zamindars found it difficult to pay. There was no remention in revenue in times of crop failure and famine. Anyone who failed to pay the revenue lost his zamindari, and the old zamindars were rapidly replaced by the new ones. In 1820s, the situation changed. The prices of grains in the market rose and cultivation slowly expanded. This meant an increase in the income of the zamindars but no grain for the company, as it could not increase the revenue demand that had been fixed permanently. Zamindars could keep evicted peasants and giving the land to new ones at higher rents. On the other hand, in the villages, the cultivators found the system extremely oppressive. The rent he paid to Zamindar was high and his right on the land was insecure. To pay the rent, he had to take loan often from the money lender, and when he fails to pay the rent, he has evicted from the land he had cultivated for generations. The Roytwari system. By the early 19th century, many of the company officials were convinced that the system of revenue collection had to be changed again. The districts of Ballari, Anantapur, Kadapa and Kurnool were seized to the British by Nizam on account of debt in maintaining the British contingent. This area is known as Rayalaseema. Thomas Munro was appointed as the principal collector of these districts in November 1800. At that time, the ceded districts were in complete anarchy. There were 8 paligars or petty chiefs in this area. They resisted the imposition of British rule and indulged in constant war and looting. Munro first subdued the Paligra and disbanded their armed followers. After restoring law and order, Munro commenced his work of survey and revenue settlement. He realized that there was no zamindars in the south like in North India. Instead, there were close-knit peasant communities in Andhra and Tamil countries who held the land, cultivated it and paid revenue. Recognizing the importance of peasants, he devised the Roytwari system, which was introduced in entire South India and later in Western India. Roytwari means peasants' tenure. It was decided to collect revenue from the actual cultivators, owners of the land who either worked on the land themselves or got the lands cultivated by others. Under this settlement, the peasants cultivating the land were identified, their fields was identified and a survey number was given to every piece of land, fixing the legal ownership. The yield, price situation, market conditions and the crop cultivated was taken into account to decide the tax per acre. But before the cultivation commenced in 1801 to 1802, Munro made necessary advances to the Royds to purchase seeds, implements, bullock carts and to repair old wells or dig new ones. He argued that the British government should act as a father figure protecting the Royds. This proved very effective and that year saw a bumper crop and very good revenue collection. This confirmed that Munro's approach was right. Development activities. Some British administrators believed that it is the duty of the government to invest in large-scale irrigation works. This would enable farmers to cultivate land and grow high-value cash crops. Due to the untiring effects of Sir Arthur Cotton, an anicut across the Godavari River at Dhavaleshwaram was completed in 1849. It brought immediately prosperity to the districts which had suffered acutely from severe famine in 1833. Similarly, an anicut was built over the Krishna River at Vijayawada in 1854, which brought prosperity to the delta areas. After 1857, the Kurnool-Kadapa Canal was built to bring water to the dry areas of Rayalaseema. These measures, even though significant, had only a limited impact as they covered only small regions. Most part of the country still continued to depend upon rains, and the exceptions that the zamindars and the prosperous Royds will invest in small irrigation projects like wells and tanks did not materialize. The results. In the Roytwari area, the land revenue was fixed at a very high level. Unlike in the zamindari areas, it was fixed for 20 to 30 years. After expiry of the tenure period, the revenue was revised, taking the changed conditions into consideration. Prices rose faster than the land revenue, and the Royds found it more profitable to the employed tenants to cultivate their land and receive rent from them. Soon the Roydbury area too was full of landlords who rented out their land to helpless tenants for very high rents. The tenants had to pay rent that was 3 to 7 times more than the land revenue paid by the Royds to the government. As a result, they too did not have any interest in investing in improving agriculture, but only in renting it out at higher and higher rates. Commercialization and moneylenders. Driven by the desire to increase the income from land, revenue officials fixed too high a revenue demand. Peasants were unable to pay and fled the countryside. Thus, villages became deserted in many regions. Peasants very often borrowed money from moneylenders in order to pay their land revenue. If they could not repay their loans on time, the moneylenders also went to court to get their land auctioned to recover the loan money. Due to this new British rule for collecting land revenue, many peasants fell into deep debt trap. There was also another reason why these debts kept increasing. With an increase in the export of agricultural produce, the agricultural prices were determined by international market. For example, in 1861, there was civil war in America and British factories turned to India for supply of cotton. As a result, cotton prices soared high and farmers began taking loans to grow cotton in the hope of getting high prices. The Civil War in the USA ended in 1865 and the demand for Indian cotton fell, and so did its price. Cotton that fetched 12 annas per kilo in 1864 now fetched only 6 annas per kilo. The peasants suffered a lot as they could not earn enough to pay back the loans they had taken. The money lenders became richer and richer as more and more peasants came under their grip. The Royds of Ganjam, who had pinned their hopes on repaying huge profits from cotton crop, suddenly became pauper. Not only that, rice became scarce since cotton was grown on the fields where previously paddy was cultivated. The scarcity of rice hit all sections of the population. Thousands of people died in hunger in the famine known as Ganjam famine. Many people migrated to South Africa, Mauritius, Fiji and other distinct places as coolies. The Zamindars' exploitation of the peasants. During the colonial period, the peasants were forced to do vetti on the personal land of the landlords. If they refused, the soldiers used to force them to do vetti. The soldiers would even catch peasants walking on the roads and forced them to do the vetti in the Zamindars' fields. The peasants were forced to work on the Zamindars' field, and many peasants could not cultivate their own fields properly. They could not improve their fields. Their plight can be seen in a government report written in 1878. The report says that the peasants do not try to dig well on their land or irrigate it, nor do they try to burn their fields or dig drains or use fertilizers. If they improve their farming, the Zamindars immediately increased the share he takes from them. But the Zamindars also prevent the peasants from improving their fields because they are afraid that the peasants would then start asserting their rights over the land. Countless collections, seizures and payments. The Zamindars also tried to extract as much money as they could from the peasants under a variety of pretexts. The peasants also had to regularly supply ghee, milk, vegetables, gur, straw, cow dung cakes, etc. free of cost to the Zamindar's house. This was the situation in many provinces of India. Bengal, Bihar and Uttar Pradesh had many big and powerful zamindars. Each of them owned dozens or even hundreds of villages. The peasants kept trying to resist the excess of these zamindars. Daughters and peasants of Hyderabad state. In the Hyderabad state, under the Nizam rule, there were many forms of subordinate chieftaincies like Jagirdars, Samanthanamdars and Inamdars, which ruled like independent chiefs. They collected revenue from the land under them and gave a small part of the Nizam as peshkash and kept the remaining with them. They were also responsible for the administration of their areas. In Hyderabad state, there were about 1500 Jagirs spread over 6535 villages and 14 Samsthanams over 497 villages. About 1400 villages were directly under the Nizam as his personal Jagir. The rest of the kingdom was administered as described below. The Nizams who ruled Hyderabad state were under the British and had to follow their policies. In the first half of the 19th century, they tried to collect maximum land revenue through Deshmukhs and it resulted in desertion of land by peasants and complete decline of agriculture. In view of this situation, the Nizam's government set up a new land revenue agreement by which the government appointed district officials to collect land revenue directly. The old landowners were compensated with an annual payment called Rusum and they were also given patta rights of full ownership over the land and adjoining wastelands and forests. As the landlords realized that there was a large export market for several agricultural products like castor, groundnut, etc., they brought more wastelands under cultivation to grow these crops. They expanded the scope of vetty or unpaid labor by forcing ordinary peasants and village artisans and service castes to work on landlord lands. The large landlords were called Doras. Doras and peasants of Hyderabad state. The Doras lived in large fortified houses called Gadi and had a large retinue of servants and soldiers. They had vast lands cultivated by tenants and also lands directly cultivated with forced labor. They acted as village moneylenders too. They also had judicial powers over the entire village. They settled all village disputes and were usually partitioned towards the upper caste. Other village officials like patwaris and small landlords too had to abide by their orders. They forcibly ensured that the low caste laborers worked for all the upper caste and especially the landlords. They enforced such rules like no lower caste persons could wear shirt or slippers or wear a turban and always remain bent before the Doras and addressed them as their masters. In Telangana region, in Mehboob Nagar and Nalgonda districts, there were 550 Doras who owned more than 1000 acres of land. There were landlords who owned about 1 lakh acres like Visnuri Ramachandra Reddy and Jana Reddy Pratap Reddy. Famines. Famines or massive food shortages leading to acute distress were a regular feature of the British rule. Due to the high taxes and rents, the peasants had little reserve to face difficult seasons or crop failures. Further, food grains were exported out of the country. This created scarce situation in the entire country. In addition, often the government refused to interfere when large traders tried to create artificial scarcity by hoarding food grains. Andhra, like the rest of the country, suffered from severe famines in the 19th and 20th centuries. The most severe famine, commonly known as the Ganjam famine, occurred during the year 1865 to 66. Repeated famines occur in the Rayalaseema district due to the lack of irrigation facilities. Not less than 11 famines occurred during the later half of the 19th century. The peasant movements. The peasants were deeply troubled by high and land revenue rates, the oppression of the landlords and moneylenders. During the colonial period, the peasants in different parts of the country protested and fought against the landlords, merchants and state officials. The famous peasant movements were the Deccan riots of 1860s, Rampa Fichuris, Moppila agitation, which have taken organized forms. While in the 19th century, the movements took the form of open revolts, the peasants joined the national movement in large number in the 20th century. In 1920 to 22, the peasants of Badha in Uttar Pradesh took out huge procession to protest against the zamindars who were extracting money from them. Many zamindars were socially boycotted and driven from the villages. The peasants also refused to till the fields of zamindars who tried to evict their tenants or claimed too much rent from them. The peasants formed Kisan Sabhas to carry their agitation forward and demanded abolition of landlordism, reduction of land revenue and control over moneylenders. The British government helped the zamindars to suppress the revolts.
మా వీడియో గనుక మీకు నచ్చినట్లయితే లైక్ చేయండి, షేర్ చేయండి. ఇలాంటి మరిన్ని వీడియోస్ కోసం మా ఛానల్ని సబ్స్క్రైబ్ చేసుకోవడం మాత్రం మర్చిపోకండి. థ్యాంక్ యూ ఫర్ వాచింగ్.